Taki and Mitsuha's connection is not the only romantic connection in Makoto Shinkai's many great films, but it is the one that I think has resonated the most with people, and it is the purest and most complete connection in his work, because it is the most absolute and the most knowing. It is between two people who come to really know each other in a very visceral and very intimate way. Now, I don't say any of this as a criticism of Shinkai's other films. Which are not always trying to do the same thing. There is a good degree of idealization and sentimentalization in many other Shinkai films, but it's intentional. There is this innate disconnect between the image of the beloved and who that person actually is. And that distance is a major part of the drama in those films. Films like Garden of Words, 5 centimeters a second, films like that. Your Name, Kimi no Nawa, however, is just a grand cosmic romance. Everything is elevated. If life, as is reflected in narratives, can range from complete knowledge, complete understanding, complete revelation, as in something like myth, to complete ignorance and stumbling, disconnect and fragmentation, and irony, as in a lot of more modern, cynical works that present a fallen world, Kimi no Nawa is very much closer to the land of myth, to the land of this complete revelation, complete understanding, complete oneness, complete unity. It is a world where everything can be known. It is a world that starts off on the ordinary human level, which is a level it portrays ambivalently. Shinkai is very much a humanist. There is a deep care and concern for humanity in his films, and he has a more positive opinion of our species than, say, Hayao Miyazaki, who, for all his love of people at their best, has a rather grim idea of people as a whole. Shinkai likes people, but he sees the individual perspective as being limited by narrowness and insularity, by the fact that the individual perspective is tied merely to a rather narrow, rather limited degree of understanding, simply what people have experienced in their own lives and what people experience in their little milieu, their little subsection of society. And so they experience the world as a series of divisions and dichotomies that are ultimately, for Shinkai, illusory and limited. They're merely apparent and perceived. In reality, there is a kind of unity. And that unity is very much viscerally lived by Taki and Mitsuha, who are superficially very different people. Taki is a, as we see, rather aggressive city boy who is a bit confused. He has a crush on an older woman. He doesn't seem miserable in his old life, but he doesn't seem particularly fulfilled or satisfied either. He's just an ordinary, not particularly reflective city boy. Mitsuha, conversely, is much more plaintive at the beginning of the film. She knows that she's not satisfied with her life. She, in an abstract way, represents tradition, the past, classic Japanese culture, but she's alienated from that culture. She views her role in all these ceremonies as kind of embarrassing and irrelevant. She doesn't want that past. She wants modern life and all its excitements. So we have two people whose perspectives are a bit limited. And they greatly benefit from getting to live life as one another. Shinkai is very good at taking things that could seem rather silly or supercilious and making them into works of real depth and understanding, really hanging resonance and meaningfulness upon what can initially seem rather trivial. And it is because he focuses on the emotionality of the stories, not just what's happening, but what it means for the characters. Suzume, Shinkai's later film, has a lot of plot points that seem grandiose and a bit ridiculous, but the film's not really about that. It's about this young girl who's experienced great loss, going to all these other little towns and helping people heal. Helping create a sense of harmony and peacefulness in these broken, forgotten little communities that have suffered such great tragedy, and it ultimately builds to her reconciling with her own fractured, embittered feelings and finding a sense of peace and closure herself. Kimi no Nawa is very similar in that regard. The body swapping could have just been a tool for some silly, childish jokes, and there are some of those, don't get me wrong, but Shinkai uses that device to explore this feeling of complete connectedness. The experience of really getting to live as someone else, to understand their perspective, because you have to live that perspective, because you have to experience the lives of someone else, someone who is apparently, superficially, very different from you. And it is important to note, and it's meaningful to the film to note, that they grow deeply as a result of this experience. Their lives are genuinely improved by their connection, not through some mystical salvational power of love, but because they have the chance to leave behind their rather initially limited, childish views of the world and get to understand what other perspectives, other worldviews, other values, other lifestyles can be like. They deepen their understanding. Taki as Mitsuha helps her in a lot of ways. He gives her a bit of that aggressiveness, a bit of that forcefulness that she was lacking, as she is a very shy and timid girl, overburdened by familial legacy, and not really as able to speak out and speak her frustrations except when she is by herself or only with her little sister. Mitsuha, conversely, gives to Taki's life a bit of gentleness, a bit of that greater elegance and interpersonal knowledge. It is a rather humorous note that they both are quite popular romantically as the other. Mitsuha, as Taki, gets the attention of Taki's crush, the older Mizukadera, while Taki, as Mitsuha, gets a whole slew of boys to fall for her. It's humorous and cute, but it's also an understanding that these two different sides of life, the masculine and the feminine, let's say, are not oppositional. They're not only in contrast. We need some of these qualities regardless of which side of that divide we fall under. This divide is merely apparent. It's not actually as dichotomous as it appears. These feminine qualities can help boys, and these more masculine qualities can help girls. And that is overall in line with the greater perspective of this film, which is about transcending these binaries, going beyond, say, the difference between the present and the past. There are a lot of good things in the present. Shinkai clearly loves Tokyo. If you have seen any of his films, his deep appreciation for that wild, exhilarating modern city is clear, and yet he also has a deep appreciation for the past of Japan, this mythical understanding that has a depth and a broadness that has been forgotten in the modern world. Individual life does not exist in isolation. People are not merely these atomized individuals, rather, they exist within these larger patterns, these larger emotional and philosophical frameworks that keep repeating throughout history, throughout time. These mythical experiences have this deep truth, this deep importance that should not be forgotten. They speak to a greater and more essential kind of human experience that the isolation of modern society that both Taki and Mitsuha start the film experiencing does not really account for. Country and city, past and present. Shinkai does not take one side over the other, but he does have a skepticism toward modern society for its disenchantment, for how it tends to reduce life to these superficial utilitarian characteristics, and this deeper underlying subterranean sense of connection and oneness is lost. These are great principles. I've talked about Northrop Frye's ideas of the registers of works of art, ranging from both the mythical on one side to the very ironic and cynical and disenchanted on the other. But I will also reference Emerson, who talks about this underlying oneness, this underlying unity and connectivity between people that is lost in a overstimulated and commercialistic society that produces this kind of disconnect from other people and from ourselves and our own personal experiences. And Emerson talks about how it is important to gain this greater and broader sense of understanding, to deeply, viscerally understand that sense of oneness. This is why Emerson loves going out in nature, for instance, because that oneness, this unity and connectedness of all things, which is apparent there, most of all, in nature, truly exists anywhere and everywhere. What he stresses is the need to not simply see individual lives as unprecedented and isolated occurrences, but rather existing within these larger emotions, these larger tensions and situations and experiences that are innate to life in the world. This film is very much talking about a lot of the same things, but importantly, it grounds them in specifics. It grounds them in human interaction and human connectedness. They're not just abstract philosophical principles here. There are actual people falling in love because they know each other so well. Love and connectedness are, for this film, innately interrelated. In fact, I'd go further. I'd say that they are the same thing. True love here, not a kind of idealized infatuation, but true, genuine love, is equivalent in the film with absolute understanding and knowingness, having a complete knowledge, a complete understanding of what it is to live and exist as someone. Taki and Mitsuha have that, and it's a bit awkward at first, but it becomes a very, very strong connection for them, and they prosper because of it, and they end up being willing to do anything to defend that connection. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this one before anyone else. Keep watching Kimi no Na wa. It truly is a masterpiece. All of Shinkai's films are, I think. Adios, comrades.